Hello and welcome to E-commerce World Review. I'm Paul Skeldon. I'm the mobile editor, Internet Retailing. I'm also one of the editors at the research company Retail X. And I'm talking to you now about how to export using e-commerce to Australia and New Zealand. The UK has recently, as you'll have noticed in the news, done a trade deal with Australia. We already have quite close ties with Australia and New Zealand, and both these markets are potentially ripe for some good old-fashioned English e-commerce. Now, at Retail X, we've done some research into a whole array of different international markets and taken a look at how consumers shop, what they like to buy online, and how open or not they are to buying from the UK. And we've also put together these presentations around what we found, along with some anecdotal evidence, talking to retailers who actually do it and to people in the retail industry in Australia as to, and in New Zealand, as to how to actually tap into these markets. So some of the logistical issues with actually making it work, should you wish to. They're lucrative opportunities. They have their challenges, being located quite some way away. That in itself, as we shall see, also offers some benefits. So we've taken a look at the Australian and New Zealand markets. I'm going to look at Australia first. I'm going to look at Australia in slightly more depth because a lot of what's true for the Australian market also applies to the New Zealand market, particularly in terms of how to do business there. I shall do Australia first, then I shall come to New Zealand more briefly at the end because, like I say, it just builds on what we've already learned. So in Australia, the economic and e-commerce opportunity, 10th largest e-commerce market in the world. 52% of Australian shoppers shop online regularly. And the UK already exports around £15 billion worth of goods annually to the country, making it the UK's 14th largest export market. I suspect that might change. Hopefully we'll grow and go up the UK's export rankings. Now we have a trade deal in place. More broadly, the Australian retail market has grown 9.2% across 2019 into 2020. Figures for 2020 into 2021, a bit harder to really sort of make an assessment of because of COVID and the impact that's had. But a good rule of thumb is it's around about a 10% year-on-year growth rate. It's a growing economy. And e-commerce in Australia has grown phenomenally in the 5 years between 2015 and 2020, 17%, which is pretty big compared to most other markets. They've come to it perhaps late, dare I say, but have embraced it with great Aussie enthusiasm. So from our research of 1,000 Australian consumers, we've taken a look at what they buy and how they shop. How often they shop online there, more than once a month, nearly 40%, more than once a week, nearly a third, and once a day, 4%. That's, quite a lot of people doing it once a day. So as you can see, sort of it's almost sort of 3/4 there are shopping online at least once a month. And on average, they're spending up to $180 a month on online goods. Surprisingly, actually, there's 3/4 of them are spending up to around $450. This is US dollars, not Australian dollars, which is significantly higher proportion than it is in all the other markets we've looked at. That's a lot of people who are prepared to spend on really reasonably big ticket items online, which bodes well for trying to export from the UK to Australia, as it opens up the range of things that you can sell. One of their shopping habits, so 35% are absolutely keen to see foreign brands available to buy online in Australia. A quarter of them there, quite a lot. Even 30% are reasonably interested. So that's the bulk of them. 90% of them are very much up for seeing foreign brands available to buy. When it comes specifically to UK brands, a third of them are absolutely interested in UK brands. A quarter there, quite a lot, and a third again, a little bit. So again, 91% of them are very much keen on seeing UK brands available to purchase online in the country. How often do they buy foreign goods? In reality, 68% of them do buy foreign goods from foreign websites. That's a lot. That's high, much higher than we've seen in other countries. And when it comes to UK brands, almost half, slightly under half, admittedly, have purchased UK brands in the past year. That's encouraging, I think. It might not be as high as we've seen in some markets. It's clearly not the majority of the foreign bought website items we're seeing across the whole market, but it's significant enough, I think. And I think with a trade deal in place, and given the ties we already have with Australia and New Zealand, it's encouraging. And I think it does, again, paint a picture that there is a keen opportunity for UK e-commerce in Australia. Why do they buy foreign goods? Well, as with almost all markets, the overriding driver is that the products are seen as more unique. They're not sort of like the bog standard domestic local things. Anyone can buy. They have a little cachet of being foreign. The style of them is often different. They're often also seen as exotic, which most of us here in the UK probably don't view ourselves as being exotic, but to other parts of the world, there is a cachet of UK-ness, and there is an exoticism. Not least that there is a sort of tie up there with the sort of the royal angle. You don't necessarily have to be a staunch monarchist to appreciate the fact that there is a certain sort of appeal to things that are associated with Britain and the monarchy. Other there, which accounts for 7%. Within that, there's some interesting sort of subgroups. They're not massive numbers, but I think they point to some of the other motivators that are worth considering. Typically, price is actually one of the drivers, and recommendations from friends and family. So people who are buying things from the UK are pleased, and they have a good experience, and they recommend it on, and that's driving a lot more sales from those sites. So that's something that can be built upon going forwards. As I just said, the experience is positive. As you can see there, that's sort of just mapped out that half of them say it's largely positive, 48% somewhat positive. So that's 98% are having a positive experience with buying from UK retailers and buying UK goods and brands, which leads to the recommendations, which helps drive the sales. Price, obviously, I did mention earlier on, also comes into that. It's worth noting that Australian consumers are prepared to pay a little bit more, particularly for online goods, whether that's from the UK or domestically. So there is that helps, I think, drive the perception of the UK e-commerce market, that price, which is a factor because you have got to, in theory, possibly ship things from quite far away, which does have a cost, isn't necessarily going to be a barrier to entry to the market. Depends what you sell. I think if you can tap into that uniqueness and the style of what you're selling, then you can command a higher price that can cover the extra costs of getting goods to the country because of that. So that's worth looking into. So what are they actually buying? These are an assessment of the top 100 retailer share of the Australian market. It doesn't add up to 100 because their data shows percentage share of the Australian market accounted for by UK top 100 retailers. The balance is made up of non-top 100 retailers. So as you can see there, consumer electronics is again a very popular, with almost a quarter share there. Now, that's not necessarily fridges, freezers, computers. It also includes a lot of smaller shippable gadgets. So that's sort of, I think, more indicative of the fact that electronic gadgetry and smaller electrical items that can be shipped all that way are actually quite popular from the UK. The UK, they're getting 23% of it, which is bigger than the share of both the domestic and the EEA. Fashion as well, which we've seen across all of our research into export markets. UK fashion is a real success story that we don't hear enough about, I don't think. A lot of UK apparel is sold in foreign markets, and Australia is no different. It has a keen eye for UK fashions, and it's seen as much more often more stylish, and again has this uniqueness and has a reputation for quality. And I think there are some UK apparel retailers, ASOS in particular, who have delivered a really good experience to Australian shoppers, particularly bearing in mind, as we saw at the beginning, that they're reasonably new to e-commerce. And I think they've been faced with some of these great services like ASOS and have suddenly thought, no, this is really good and this really works. So that's helped drive that side of the market. So fashion and apparel generally is a key sector, I would say, one that certainly, if that's your line of business, it is worth looking at what your opportunities in Australia could be. Homewares, sports and leisure apparel and equipment, and cosmetics are all also doing well in the Australian market. Not as well as the other two, but they're certainly there. I think there's potential for enormous growth across there. The sports and leisure and apparel and equipment side of the market is largely led by the sports apparel side. So that's sort of, in my mind at least, allied to fashion. And I think the same things I just sort of said about the fashion market applies there. Likewise with homewares. Homewares is becoming part of a fashion lifestyle sort of play. Many fashion retailers are also selling sort of soft furnishings and small item homewares. I think we're seeing that play through into export of goods out to the Australian market. Cosmetics too, there's a growing online cosmetics and health and beauty sector in the UK, and that's starting to bleed out into the wider market. So Australians are again looking for that sort of uniqueness and sort of Britishness in cosmetics, and they have a very good reputation. So that's also there. Only 4% share currently, but I think ripe for further growth, and again, well worth looking into. So that's the kind of things people like to buy. That's how often they shop. That's how much they're sort of looking to spend. You get an idea of the sort of price point that will work. How do you actually do business in Australia? Now, it's a long way away, and that's probably the biggest problem, but it's also one of its biggest advantages. So the first top tip really for trying to get yourself going from an e-commerce perspective in Australia is to look at localization. Now, time and space. Australia is literally on the other side of the world to the UK. It's between 10 and 12 hours ahead, time-wise, which you have to factor in. Now, the distance obviously is an issue when it comes to shipping. Because if you're shipping from the UK, it's going to take time. Luckily, the Australian market, e-commerce market, they do buy from all over the world, and I think shipping times aren't as important as part of the sell as they are maybe here in the UK. It's not that it's not important, but it's not necessarily a deal breaker. If the goods are unique enough and it's what they want, they're getting value for money, then they'll buy and wait. It does, however, the time difference have an impact on customer service. If you have to deal with issues from Australian consumers, you're going to get them at the opposite times to the way you get them here in the UK. Now, if you're a big enough company and can run a 24-hour customer service call center, that's great. You're in business all day. The sun never sets on your customer service. If you're a smaller player entering the market, sort of the toe in the water, this is going to be more difficult. You are going to get calls and emails and things that are when you're in bed, essentially. Not necessarily a deal breaker. I think you just have to be clear that you are in the UK, and particularly with email customer services, you need to bounce back saying we will respond to this within 24 hours or however you want to put it, just to give them that sort of notice that you got their request, but it might take some time to handle. The alternative is to employ customer service in Australia, which we shall come to. Where the time difference and being on the other side of the world come into an advantage is seasonality. The seasons are reversed in Australia. So when it's summer here, it's winter there, and vice versa, which can be good if you're looking to shift stock that you've got left from, say, the summer season in the UK. Your Australian operation is ideal for that at the opposite side of the year, and vice versa. So while you're selling winter clothes or winter items in the UK, you can be selling your summer stock in Australia and then flip it around. It needs to be borne in mind when looking at doing your marketing and how you run your website, particularly how you run your English UK website versus your Australian website. You need to make sure they're different, but it can play to your advantage. Language is also an issue. They do speak English, but they do speak English differently, and we are sort of separated by a common language in many ways. They refer to things in different ways. For example, flip-flops are thongs are knickers, and trainers are runners. They're called Facebook, Facey, Christmas, Crimbos, all sorts of things. It's not necessarily a big deal, but you need to maybe sort of look at getting someone who's Australian to translate your web content, for example, into Australian English, because it will just sound wrong. The alternative is that you play up the fact that you're a UK company and be overly English about it. Let's make a positive out of that. So it's not a thing you have to get right, but it's something I think that you do need to give consideration to. Payments. Obviously, you want to get money from the things you sell. How do you do that? Now, as with a lot of countries, cards are by far the majority of how online payments are taken, which of course is easy to do if you already operate through a payment gateway, payment service provider. You're probably equipped to handle the kind of cards. They're the standard cards you would get anywhere: MasterCard, Visa, American Express, etc. From the Australian market. Not really that difficult. It's worth, I think, thinking about the price. You need to price in Australian dollars. You need to, swallow any currency differences so that they're not seeing something different come up on their bill. But card payments are by far the easiest thing to integrate and the easiest way to take payments. E-wallets, which are essentially digitizing card payments. Let's face it, there's not. It's nothing sort of particularly difficult. Particularly PayPal are already growing very popular. The growth of mobile is also leading to sort of more mobile wallets. So being able to handle payments from digitized cards through things like PayPal are also a good way to start taking money. Bank transfers, again, as we've seen in a lot of countries, bank transfers are surprisingly popular. Not so much in the UK, but I think we might see that change. So this might be something that is worth looking into if you are going to operate in other markets, particularly Australia and New Zealand and Japan and the US and Germany, where they're all very popular. I think we might see, because they're very instant, you might start seeing those play through in the UK as well. So it might be worth looking at. Again, not that difficult to do if you've got a payment service provider, or you can do it through your bank. Mobile payments increasingly taking a small share of the payments. More people are shopping online through their mobile phone in Australia like they are everywhere else. They're taking payments through Apple Pay, Google Pay, Samsung Pay, those sorts of things. It's small but growing, worth looking at. I think, again, as with bank transfers, mobile payments are going to be big everywhere. So wherever you operate, you need to be on top of mobile payments. So if you're looking to operate in Australia, why not start with that? Buy now, pay later. Very popular in Australia. It's grown 90% in a couple of years. Zip and Afterpay are the leading proponents of this. Anyone sort of already sort of selling, particularly in fast fashion in the UK, will be already familiar with BNPL. It's becoming increasingly popular. There are easy ways of doing it. Need to just talk to, like I say, Zip, Afterpay. There are other providers in Australia that do it, as to how to team up with them to make that possible. And I think in certain markets, fashion, homewares, things aimed at younger demographics, it's getting increasingly essential to have BNPL as one of your payment mechanisms. Well, not the only one, but certainly in there, in the mix with the others. So logistics, delivery and returns. Distance is an issue. It's a long, long way to Australia. it's 24 hours by air. At the very least, air freight's going to take you at least 48 hours, probably a lot longer by the time you've got it to and from airports, cleared customs, layovers, and that kind of thing. Shipping takes even longer. You have to go the long way around. Or particularly if the Suez Canal is blocked, as it was recently, that can be even longer. So shipping is worth looking at. If you're selling anything that's in any way perishable, it's probably not going to be serviceable from the UK. You're going to have to look at running the business from Australia. Anything else it can do. Customers are tolerant. Cost and speed are going to be the two main considerations for any business, but Australian consumers are more relaxed about delivery times from overseas, and they are inclined to spend more on online shopping anyway. So hopefully you can cover off the extra costs and factor in the different sort of shipping time into your pricing, and your basic offering should be okay. Returns. What on earth do you do with returns? Because you've got them all the way there. Do you want to ship them all the way back? Very expensive, very difficult to do. It may well be worth, depending on what you're selling, factoring in dead returns. So they return them to a warehouse in Australia, but then you never get them back. You write them off. You factor that cost, as you know, into your upfront price. One way of doing it works with some items. A better way is to try and find a B stock retailer in Australia to handle it and resell it for you. They can handle the local returns to them. They can package it up, recondition, whatever, and sell on. And you get a slice of that. It's a way of covering some of the costs. It's a way of handling returns in a more effective way. It's certainly worth looking into. There are a lot of B stock retailers, as we shall come to with marketplaces. That can also be a way around the returns because they can handle that for you. But we'll come to that momentarily. One way to help you with all the logistics and to find ways of delivering locally and to get the things out there and to handle customs and all the tariffs and VAT and all the rest of it, all the complicated paperwork, is to use a freight forwarder who can work with you to deliver that for you for a fee. But it takes that headache of managing that whole process away from you. Particularly good for small and medium-sized retailers, and particularly good if you're just getting going, because it takes away a huge amount of the complexity. There are people who know what they're doing with those countries and have companies locally who they can help with logistics. It can also probably help you find ways of dealing with your returns through B stock retailers or other ways of handling return items as well. So check out Freight Forwarders Association. They have they'll be able to tell you how to do this and put you in touch with all the relevant people. Marketplaces. So as with any export market, or particularly trying to open up a new geography for your business, marketplaces are an ideal way of doing it. eBay Australia and Amazon Australia are the two largest. In Australia, they also service New Zealand. We'll come to New Zealand and what they buy shortly. But using marketplaces in Australia is an excellent way of getting your goods out there, getting the content in the right sort of language, managing the logistics of delivery, of handling customer service, even handling returns. If you're getting going with this is the place to start. This is certainly the places to start with putting your toe in the water, with testing out the market and seeing what sort of uptake there is for your goods in those countries. It applies to any market, no more or less than in Australia. If you already work with eBay or Amazon in the UK, makes it easier to roll that out in these markets as well. So well worth looking into those. I'd advocate using marketplaces anyway, wherever you're selling. They certainly do set you up for being able to then create a new export market for yourself and your goods. Other routes to market, though, if you don't want to go down the marketplace route, you can sell direct. Quickest route to market is to sell direct from the UK via your own website, or ideally a .com or a .au subsite. but you'll need to handle customer services. You'll need to work out your logistics yourself. You'll need to do translation. You'll need to sort out payment and pricing in the local currency. So there are challenges, but it is a way of doing it, and it means you maintain control, particularly of branding, and you're not, if you're on a marketplace, competing with all your competitors and all the local competitors. And so there are advantages. Forming local partnerships, finding a company that can act as a non-exclusive distributor of your goods, or a sole representative, or to work as the Australian arm of your UK e-commerce business, so that they can handle customer service in particular, but they can also look into all the various other things you need to do, particularly localization of delivery and returns and customs and taxes and all those sorts of things, as well as sort of translation and advice on price points and all those sorts of things. It's horses for courses, really. It will help, but you have to find the right partner, and you have to work out a great relationship with them. I mean, there's no way really of doing this without actually going to Australia and setting it up. So worth doing. You can even also create your own business in Australia. It can be complex because of the space and time differences. You need to be out there. You need to present yourself to set up a bank account and all that kind of thing. There's a lot of registration as you're with the authorities to register your company and your business. But again, it's doable, and it can get over some of these shipping, customer service, returns issues by having your own presence there in the country. You then get into problems as to whether you ship in bulk, warehouse, distribute, which has customs and tax implications, both in the UK and in Australia, or whether you're still just managing it in Australia and you processing sort of from the UK. Up to you, and it depends on what your business is, but it certainly is worth looking at that as maybe a final step in how you progress from testing the market in the marketplace to selling direct, and selling direct with local partners, to then creating your own business. So New Zealand, now very close geographically to Australia, very far from the UK, has some of the same tropes as the Australian market. I'm going to rattle through New Zealand a bit more quickly because a lot of the sort of fundamental principles of doing business there are the same. New Zealand's a smaller market, 52nd largest economy with a GDP of 115 billion. We export 1.5 billion of goods from the UK to New Zealand already. What is interesting about New Zealand is that 44% of online shopping is already cross-border. They are already buying extensively from overseas. The UK is the third most popular market for New Zealanders, behind the US and China, which is, you think about it, think about the size of the US and Chinese e-commerce markets. To come third is pretty damn good. 72% of New Zealand shoppers surveyed say they purchased something online from a foreign retailer or brand in the past 12 months in our research, and British brands and goods are popular, with 40% of shoppers there already buying British goods. So, a good base from which to start. 94% of those that have shopped via the UK have also had a very positive experience. What are they buying? As with Australia, and as if you'll watch the series of webinars that this is part of, you'll see consumer electronics and fashion from the UK are the biggies. These are the things that sell best overseas. Allied to that, again, as I said before, cosmetics, homewares, sport and leisure apparel. The UK has a really significant presence, as you can see from those pie charts there, in New Zealand, in all of those areas, particularly fashion, homewares, and sports, leisure apparel and equipment. These are things that New Zealand shoppers are buying from the UK. To be fair, they're buying them from all over the world, but the UK has a significant chunk of that market. If you're in that line of business, well worth looking at what your opportunities might be in New Zealand. Again, the sort of specifics of doing business, payments, again, cards and digital wallets, which are digitized cards essentially, are very popular. Cards, again, 56%, some £1 billion worth of online sales. It's as you'd expect, most markets are card-led still. E-wallets in New Zealand are spilling into mobile use. There's quite a big mobile base in New Zealand, and you're seeing more of that with mobile payments or e-wallets through mobile devices, and mobiles being used for e-commerce. Bank transfers, again, relatively popular. It's quick, it's easy, it's secure. So looking at how to do that is probably should be part of your mix of payments if you're looking to sell in New Zealand. Now, if you're selling in Australia, you're going to sell to Australia and New Zealand. New Zealand shoppers shop from Aussie sites. It's as simple as that. They will shop from yours as well. So if you're looking at the payment methods in Australia, you need to look at the similar way it's similar in New Zealand, particularly around bank transfers, and offer that as a payment thing. Buy now, pay later, very popular in Australia, as we've just seen. Very small, but growing in New Zealand, particularly again amongst younger consumers. So if you're looking at setting it up in Australia, you need to offer it to New Zealanders. You might not see a vast amount of payments coming through it right now, but eventually it'll get down that road. Top places to sell. Here, New Zealand sort of differs, I think, from much of the rest of the world in that it doesn't centre around Amazon and eBay. They have Amazon.com.au, which is the Australian Amazon site, is very popular in New Zealand. It does sell an awful lot. You can't fulfill, though, from Amazon in the UK to New Zealand. You have to do it via the US or from Australia. So if you're looking at Amazon as a marketplace to get your toe in the water, from the UK, it's yes, you can use it to service New Zealand, but there are challenges. Might be better to look at things like Trade Me, Easy Buy, and Graze Online, which are the key online web stores in New Zealand. Now, you're going to have to deal with them via telephone and email and set that up yourself. They're not sort of as ubiquitous as the likes of Amazon, but you can sell through them, and they will sell foreign goods, and they do get listings from companies all over the world. So finding a site to sell through in New Zealand, not as easy as it is perhaps in Japan and Australia, but it is possible. But yeah, it requires a bit of work. You may need to look at other routes to markets, like setting up your own business in the country and finding partners, as we've seen in other parts of the world. To find out more about it, the UK government's Department for International Trade offers expert advice on Australia and New Zealand. There's two sort of home pages there, one for each. That's your portal into all the official information about how to do business in both of those countries. Particularly good about taxes, tariffs, trade sort of levels, prohibited goods, all those sorts of things. It's worth noting that Australia and New Zealand both have quite strict environmental policies that you need to be aware of if you're exporting. So this is a great place to start with looking for that for both of those countries. So that's a whistle-stop tour of the market potential for Australia and New Zealand and how to do business there. I hope that's been useful. And thank you for listening. Thank you, and bye-bye.